Well, clearly, it's unacceptable. We have seen a rise, sadly, in violence and abuse and threats against retail staff during a pandemic when retail workers are out there serving the communities, making sure there's food on the tables. So yeah, disgusting behaviour from a small but significant minority of individuals who think it's okay to abuse retail workers.
Do you think retail workers are the forgotten front line of the COVID pandemic?
Well, we've said for a long time the retail sector is the Cinderella industry. It's not the steel industry, it's not the sort of rail industry, it's not the National Health Service. But what has demonstrated during this pandemic is the enormous work that has been carried out by retail workers. They've kept food on the table, they've kept the country going alongside other key workers like delivery drivers, etc. And they're recognised now as key workers, essential workers. And if anything good's to come out of it, at least now people recognise the invaluable work, the valuable work that these people carry out.
It's hard to find good news within that survey. Threats of violence increasing, physical attacks almost doubling, verbal abuse significantly high, and again coming from levels which were already unacceptable as well. And quite clearly, when you've asked your members what caused the problems, it's issues specific to the pandemic, isn't it, that have caused some of those flashpoints?
Well, it's sad, isn't it, that over the years where we've been monitoring, carrying out surveys into the violence and abuse against retail staff, it's been mainly age-restricted sales has been the main trigger point. It falls to one of the lowest levels, and sadly, enforcing social distancing comes up the highest. And again, the main boggles of this is retail workers trying to ensure the customer is safe, the communities are safe in which we all live in, and of course the retail workers themselves are safe in this working environment, and yet this is a major trigger for abuse, threats and violence towards them. It's just, it's incomprehensible.
And in terms of those people who've gone to work, they've gone to work because they couldn't work from home, they had to work on the shop line, and yet this is the reality of working on that front line and working on the shop floor, which goes to show almost a great deal of courage from your members to turn up to work every single day and to put yourself in that potential harm.
Well, you can imagine the stresses and strains and the mental anguish that people have, and everyone's different. But you're going to work throughout this pandemic knowing you're going to be working with customers and people from all walks in the community. So a real risk, a danger to catching the virus. So not only a risk to themselves as individuals, but get back home to their families, with children and probably elderly relatives or people who are socially distancing because of health issues. All of this has got to be playing heavily on their minds. So the last thing these retail workers need is further abuse, threats and violence towards them at a time when we should be acting kinder and recognising the invaluable service that they've been given by these workers.
In terms of the law and the protection, there's a change in law in Scotland, which is not yet the case in England and may not be the case in England. And yet, when you asked your members what would they like to see in regard to changes, they were actually looking at something a little bit different. They wanted more support from management. They wanted more support potentially from in-store security. In regard to that, do you think shops could have done more? The retailers themselves could have done more to protect your members on the front line?
Well, we've worked closely with the British Retail Consortium and the Association of Convenience Stores from very early on in the pandemic, putting together the guidance, the health and safety guidance to keep people safe. And that has, I'm pleased to say, has been the blueprint across industry. It's been picked up by government. But yeah, I mean, look, firstly, it's important for us to get a clear message out to the criminal fraternity that abusing, threatening and assaulting retail staff will have serious consequences. And at the minute, it's not working. No matter what the government tells us, over the last 20 years, we've been carrying out survey after survey, and this situation gets worse. Now, when you have 65 chief executives writing to the Prime Minister, supporting USDAW's call for an aggravated assault when you attack a retail worker, it really is time for the government to listen to what's been said and emulate what's taken place in Scotland, a unanimous decision by the Scottish Parliament to put in a aggravated assault for assaulting a retail worker.
Can I ask you about the mental health impact of having to go through this on a daily, certainly weekly basis as a shop worker? It shows great strength that those people have sort of been able to maintain that level of work, but it can't be good, can it, for your mental health to be going into an environment where you know there is a risk, either verbally, the threat of violence, or indeed a physical attack might be coming your way?
Well, I obviously salute these retail workers. They're going to work every day, as you say, to serve the communities. And, significant numbers of them have been abused, have been threatened, and sadly, in some cases, they've been assaulted. So, the big price we're going to pay at the end of this pandemic is the mental health issues. It must be playing in the mind of every retail worker who has to leave every day to go to work, when the vast majority are at home furloughed, are working from home. Retail workers sadly don't have that luxury to be able to work from home. They've got to go to work to serve the communities. So yeah, mental health is going to be a massive, massive problem for society, for the government, for local authorities and for employers. And we're going to have to address it, ensuring that we've got the right services and counselling, we've got the right resources in place to protect these workers.
And you mentioned the word community there. I think that's why people will be very shocked and saddened by hearing the stats that they are hearing in regard to these attacks on retail workers, that when people consider their local supermarket or the local retail store, they often think about the people who work there as part of their community. And yet those people who are going about committing these acts of violence would presumably themselves also consider themselves part of the community.
Well, absolutely. And the sad part is the convenience sector, and the convenience sector, like the co-op, is in every postcode in the UK. They're there in every particular society, in every community. And it really is important that, people within the communities take responsibility as well. It's not just the employer's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility to call this out as unacceptable. But remember, the vast majority of the British public behave properly. They go in, they do the shopping, they do it in a safe and secure way, and they go home again. It's this small but significant minority who think it's okay. And we need to call these people out. We need to ensure that the police take action when it comes to an assault. And we need to make sure the government takes this seriously and puts in the adequate response to these people who think they can go about abusing, threatening and assaulting retail workers.
Absolutely. Paddy, is there anything else you'd like to add at that point?
No, I would say a huge thank you to every retail worker out there. They do a tremendous job. They've kept the country going in what has been probably one of our darkest moments from the Second World War. I think we owe them a debt of gratitude, as we do with the National Health Service and everyone else who's had to work during this pandemic. But hopefully now we've light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccinations. And I would hope by summer we start to get back to some form of normality.